We have another exciting Maine Small Business Development Center event today. Should I start my own business? Well, yes and no. And we are very lucky to have Brad Swanson, our certified business advisor through CEI at Maine SBDC, to help answer those questions today. We're going to go over some of the risks associated, some of the benefits, generally what you should keep in mind as you're getting started. The Maine SBDC is here to support the small businesses of Maine in whatever way we can. But one thing that I think some people get confused about is that we also can help you if you don't have a small business yet, but you want one. We are here to be proactively helpful, not just reactively helpful. So definitely pay attention today, but you will also receive a follow-up email from me afterwards that will include a link to the recording as well as the slides. So if you missed anything, you can go back. It will also include our contact information so that you could follow up with any specific questions with Brad, as well as requesting one-on-one business advising. So there's a big old orange button on our website that says request advising, and I'll send a link to that. But if you have not reached out to the Maine SBDC in the past and you do have questions about starting a small business, we are here to answer any question. There's no such thing as a small question. There's no such thing as a stupid question. We love answering all questions. So keep an eye out for my email after today's event for that information, as well as Brad's information. And otherwise, I will pass it over to Brad.
Thanks, Kelsey. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Brad Swanson, and we're going to talk about, should I start my own small business? Well, yes and no. I'm not going to give you the answer. I'm going to give you a number of really important points to consider as you think about a journey that is both challenging and exciting and can be extremely rewarding. I've been working with small businesses most of my career, and I really appreciate that you are interested and excited by the idea, and I'm hoping that of starting a small business, and hoping that I can give you some pointers here that will, at a very general level, guide your inquiry. I think you need to begin and be very curious about this question, should I start my own business? So first of all, let me tell you that this is out of order. Okay. When you don't set up your Zoom animation correctly, or your PowerPoint animation correctly, you get what you get. So I work for the Maine Small Business Development Centers at CEI. We're a nonprofit community development finance institution or financial institution based in Brunswick, Maine, also out of Portland. We have an office in our Portland, but we have offices around the state. And our mission is really to provide investment, credit, and industry expertise to underserved markets and populations throughout Maine. But we also have a presence nationally through a number of our subsidiary businesses. As many of you probably know, the Maine Small Business Development Centers is a statewide organization. We serve all 16 counties here in Maine. And there are 4 host organizations which cover the state regionally. USM houses both our state office and a service center, which covers York and Cumberland counties. AvCog covers the Western Mountains and Western Maine, and Muskegon Valley Council of Governments out of Auburn. CEI has a presence with 6 full-time business advisors from Brunswick up through Ellsworth, back up to the Bangor area. So quite a, we cover the mid-coast and also Waterville with offices there. All of our services through the Maine SBDC, irrespective of who the host is, are delivered free of charge, and our work with you is confidential. So when we talk with people, we want an open, honest conversation, and we respect the privacy of the information we share. Lastly, we're here just to help small business succeed. Maine has been one of the longest term small business development centers throughout the nation. We got our charter when the SBDCs were first started. In the next 30 minutes or so, what I want to cover is I want to take a small look at the role of small business nationally. And here in Maine, I want to be able to talk about 5 key areas of inquiry that you'll want to pursue to help you decide if you want to and can start your small business. And these ideas will help you increase your chances of success if you choose that you both want to and can uh, head in that direction of starting your own small business. When I say can, there are some constraints that people do face when they want to start up their small business. They're not insurmountable. Sometimes it takes a little longer to get ready and be able. We oftentimes talk about being ready, willing, and able to start a small business. And that's a theme I use quite often with my startup clients. It's just a high level overview to get you thinking about some things as you begin your journey. I thought it'd be helpful to start with a definition of what is a small business. So the small business is defined by the Small Business Administration, the national lending authority that also hosts small business development centers, SCORE, and a variety of other small business technical assistance programs. So here's their answer, okay? The answer is varied by industry, but as a small business is one that has fewer than 1,500 employees and a maximum of 38.5 million average annual receipts. So it's not our typical client. Our typical client really is a sole proprietor with no employees. And we have 30 million plus or minus small businesses. 80% of them are sole proprietors with no employees. So this is one of the wheelhouses that we serve. 18% of the 30 million, or somewhere about 5.5 million small businesses have between 1 and 19 employees, which is more reasonable when you think about Maine's small business population. And then the remainder of the small businesses, 2%, who make up this large 38.5 million, they really skew the annual receipts figure. But these 20 to 49, 499 employees are 2% of the overall small business population as defined by the SBA. If you're thinking about going into small business, you're in good company. I think a lot of people think that small business is a tremendous pathway for employment, and it can be. One of the things that I found interesting is that 75% of the workforce considers small business at one time or another, but also only about 5% of people actually go that route. And there are a variety of reasons which we won't delve into today, but they could have to do with risk aversion, financial capability, family obligations, professional capacity. There are a number of reasons why small business appears to be attractive, but when you begin to research it, you find that maybe you're better off staying where you are. In Maine, people who start small businesses, operate and grow the businesses, have a real large influence on our economy. We are a small business state. Hence, the Maine Small Business Development Center is a really valuable resource. Let's say, the most recent stats I could find were from 2017. Probably have other statistics that are more up to date. Certainly, the COVID pandemic has impacted small businesses in a very large way. Some industries soaring, many industries, especially tourism and hospitality, restaurants and the like. We've all heard how difficult this has been. But as of 2017, almost 300,000 people, or about 57% of the workforce, was employed by small businesses. And most of them being employed by businesses with 20 or fewer employees. So that's very typical if you think back to the national statistics. Sole proprietors increased in 2018 by about 2.5% relative to 2017. So here are these no employees possible. But sole proprietorship is just a legal structure. It doesn't mean you're the owner and you're the only employee. It just means you've decided to run your business as a sole proprietorship for risk and tax purposes. Small businesses created about 6,000 net jobs in 2019, before the pandemic. And the 20 less employees added most of those jobs, about 80%, almost 5,000 jobs. The smallest gains in the growth of employment were by the larger companies. There's probably some good reasons for that, but these stats say that they added about 240 new jobs. Again, small business, 0 or sole proprietor to 20 employees is really the backbone of the Maine economy. And I would guess for my colleagues and me, this is the group that we most often spend our time with. Okay, some cautionary points about starting and running a small business. I found a recent study commissioned by LendingTree. LendingTree is an online financing group. They commissioned a survey to find out, well, what happens when small businesses fail? And 42% of the businesses failed because there just wasn't a sufficient demand for what they were selling. And that's the point we're going to talk about in just a little bit. 29% ran out of cash to pay the bills of the owner. Cash flow is a major concern in all small business, very risky in startup. We spend a lot of time talking about cash flow projections and what it's going to take to actually start and grow your business to profitability. 17% didn't really have a business model, which means they didn't know how they were going to operate and sell the product or service that they wanted, and so that led to the failure. You know, the old adage, people don't plan to fail, they fail to plan, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that as well. And here's one, they ignored their customers. What I take on this, my take on this is that obviously you need customers to survive. You exchange goods and services for cash, and they get the benefits, and they keep doing business with you. If you're not paying attention to what they want and need, and you're making decisions that are not based on customers' wants and needs, then pretty sure that you're going to go out of business. Okay, so what's it really take to start a small business here in Maine? What are the main things you should think about? Well, I think because everybody's got a different goal and everybody starts a small business for a different reason, one of the most important things to do is to think about what you want to accomplish. You know, starting a small business is really an end, it's a means to an end. Yeah, it can be a goal by itself. I started my business. I know I'm selling something. I've got customers. Great. But what do you want to do with that small business? So also, once you know what you want to do, you have to figure out if there's a need in the marketplace. And remember, it's the statistics that 42% of the businesses, small businesses that failed, just didn't identify, and there was not enough market demand with customers who would pay for what they were selling and enough volume over time so that they could make a comfortable return. And remember, small business both has to cover its own costs and your cost of living. So very important thing to remember. We need a plan to figure out how we're going to be successful. I'm going to go into these in more detail, one by one. But the issue of credit, capital, collateral, and cash flow, very, very important in the initial considerations of getting started. And lastly, I want to talk about you having an amazing range of personal and professional traits. And what are the typical traits of someone who succeeds well in small business? So we're going to go over these 5 points for the remaining of the conversation. Okay, let's talk about it. First, know how you want to define success. And the question I want you all to think about is, what do you want to accomplish, and when will you measure whether or not you've gotten there? One of the things we know about small businesses is if you're not measuring what you're doing, then the business is running you and you're not running the business. So having time-phased goals that are both achievable and realistic is really important. So the first question I ask my clients is, tell me what success is going to look like, and how long do you think it's going to take for you to reach that particular point in time? Now, starting a business, as I said earlier, it's a means to an end. We've got something that you want to do. You've got to be able to measure, know how to measure whether or not you're accomplishing those things. So, for instance, I want to make $10,000 net income after taxes by the end of my first year. That's a time-phased measurable goal. And your means to do that is through your small business. So how are you going to measure success? A second point that's very, very important to consider, and this is a function of research that you can and will do. Small Business Development Center advisors are really good at coaching on market analysis, market research, market planning, market strategy. But you need to come up with an idea for a product or a service that will compete well in the market. Remember, everybody who wants something that you're going to be selling is already buying it from somebody else, right? So you're the new kid on the block, and you've got to figure out what you're going to do in order to get enough volume of sales, cover all your costs, and pay yourself a sufficient return, income that you derive from your business activity. Very, very important to recognize that there's competition. You're entering a competitive endeavor, and you really got to know who's out there, what they're doing, who the leaders are, and what you're going to do to make people want what you're planning to sell. Okay? Do people want or need what you're planning to sell? Remember that 42% statistic with business failures, it just wasn't a demand. So it's possible to figure out how much you need to sell, what you need to price it at in order to reach your goals. And this is part of our overall business planning approach, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. Why will they buy from you when they can get what they want already from somebody else? This is the issue of differentiating what you're doing in the marketplace you want to enter, so that people see that what you're doing is really more interesting, the benefits are greater, the price is right. This idea of cost-benefit analysis comes into our business planning quite a bit. If the benefit to the consumer is greater than the cost, most likely they're going to buy. So one way to think about why people will buy from you is to understand the benefit that they derive from doing business with you. And this is the idea of knowing the marketplace, what's going on, and how you're going to fit in. Lastly, you have to do research in order to come up with these answers. I live in Harpswell. Brunswick is a town nearby. Bath is a town nearby. And like many of the towns back before COVID, we had a tremendous expansion of restaurants. Different restaurants, different food sources, not sources, but different types of food, different dining experiences. In order to know what the marketplace needs, anybody who's entering a market in Bath or Brunswick would be well served to look at who the restaurants are already, and what do they serve, and how do they price it, and how many seats are there, so that if they are planning to enter that market, they do something new, unique, different, and meaningful to the customer. Our whole approach at the Maine Small Business Development Center for helping people get started is centered around business planning. A business plan is a written document, and it only costs you the time and effort that you put in to write a good business plan. Typically, you're not spending money here. You're doing your research, you're making your decisions, you're testing your assumptions, you're working with a business advisor. Business plan has several key components. The first is the marketing research to determine if your idea even makes sense. Is it feasible? Can I identify a demand? Can I identify a way to capture enough of that demand that will generate revenues over time where I can be profitable? Once you have the sense that things are feasible because you have a marketable idea, you have to put together a plan to sell to a particular group. And you need a strategy to compete. Strategy to compete, that's just doing something unique and meaningful that attracts enough customers to pay the bills and give you a return so that you can make a living. Or if this is a smaller business, if you can make the money that you feel you want to make to make this a successful business. Not every small business is intended to be a lifestyle business or a business that somebody grows to sell. Some of them are supplemental income, and that's absolutely perfectly right. We use the same approach to help people be successful for supplemental income businesses as we would do for full-time employment and business that might have employees. So when we're talking about employees and we're talking about other resources that you need to organize and finance and use to get started, we're talking about a management plan. Managers manage things, right? They plan for, implement, analyze the results of the use, and they make the changes to their plan to make sure they're on track. So management plan is about the resources you need to get started. And it's also about how you're going to organize and manage those resources to be successful. Finally, and we spend a lot of time with our clients here because this tends to be a little bit more confusing to a lot of people, is the financial planning required to test your marketing and management ideas with some projections that say, if I sell this much and I maintain my costs at this level, I should be able to be successful. Very, very important part of the plan. And we spend a lot of time there. Another important part of the planning we talk about, financial planning, is about how do I afford to get started? Well, once we know what the resources are that you need, we can begin to put a cost structure together. And we can see where that money is going to come from, right? Only a couple of sources you can find money before you open your door, and that's either borrowed money or invested money. The largest bank out there is the bank of mom and dad. It's a big one, and family money is quite often used to help in startups. But when you go to more traditional sources, lenders, commercial lenders who are profit motivated, they know that small business is risky. So once you know how much you need to borrow, then we can talk about sources of financing that might meet your needs. But you also have to contribute to those needs by either assets or cash that help the business develop its resources that it's going to need to run. And if you need $10,000, you might have to put down 2,000 of your own, around 20 to 25%, so 2,000 to 2,500. If you need $100,000, the ratio is higher, 20 to 25%, but the risk is greater because the amount is greater. So we spend a lot of time on this credit, borrowing money, your capital that goes into the business. You have to be aware that when you borrow money, the bank's going to want a secondary form of repayment called collateral. If the business fails, they seize the collateral and they sell it at a discount and they recoup their the borrowing because they use, in most cases, traditional lenders are using depositors' money, and they're governed by the FDIC, Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, and they can't make certain loans. Collateralization, securing the loan, is a big part of every loan consideration. But we spent a lot of time figuring out, well, what are your sales goals? When do sales turn to cash? What's it going to cost you to run the business? Is there enough money to pay back the lender and generate an income for you? Okay, so cash flow is the key to projecting your ability to succeed. Credit, capital, and collateral are issues related to capitalizing your business from various sources, either investment or equity, your contribution or your investor's contribution. Once you open your doors, you have a third type of cash flow. You've got sales. And any small business has to keep in mind that the way to stay in business is to continuously generate sales greater than your costs. If you have a hard time doing that, it's hard to stay in business. Which is not to say that a growing business doesn't need money to grow and can't borrow that money. But at the end of the day, any growth capital has to generate sufficient revenues for that business to be profitable over time. So we talk a lot about this. There's a lot of jargon I'm using here, and I realize that uh, business is a language. It has its own vocabulary. One of the things you need to be able to recognize is you have to figure out how business works, right? So this is where we get into your personal and professional traits for being successful. And these numbers come from a number of surveys that I looked at. There's some great questionnaires and sites where you can test your entrepreneurial skills and traits online. I didn't print any in particular, but if you just Google them, you'll get 3 or 4 that are interesting, probably valid enough, and certainly informative. But this is an interesting point to make is there's really no entrepreneurial personality, and not one type of person who is the best at going into business. You know, if you think about a 20-year-old geeky person in their room writing code for the next great social media platform, or the family of new Americans who, excuse me, purchased and are running the corner general store, very different personalities, very different motivations, very different backgrounds, both small business people. So what I've done here is I've put together a list of traits that generally describe what are the attributes of successful small business people. And I want to run through some of them as I finish up today. Um, People who are successful can answer the question, why am I doing this? I know it sounds kind of silly, but wanting to start a small business, you've got to have a motivation. And the clearer you are on the motivation, the better you'll be able to sleep at night. And I say that because I know how hard it is to live with debt. And when you wake up in the middle of the night and you say, why am I doing this? You need an answer. You need to know what your purpose is, why you started this, what you hope to accomplish. You also want to be planning and goal oriented. Good entrepreneurs realize that they've got to have a plan and they've got to be able to measure whether or not they're achieving that plan. And we call that planning and goal orientation. These are people who take personal responsibility and initiative for getting things done. When you own and run a small business, uh, you're the owner, manager, and leader. You can't expect other people to pick up the slack if you don't have employees. The whole shooting match is yours, and you wear a lot of different hats. Taking personal initiative for managing your time and the activities in small business, very, very important trait. Knowing how business works or learning quickly how business works. This is where research and education, taking trainings like today, so you guys are on this path already to learning how business works. Very, very important because business is at the end of the day, uh, um, it's a process and it works with rules. So the more you can learn what the rules are, the more you can effectively manage the process, the more success you're likely to have. I want to state this because this is important. This is within the realm of things that you can control. Business risk doesn't always lend itself to control. Nobody saw COVID coming. Nobody saw the towers in New York uh, being felled in 2001. But the impact on small business or business nationwide was tremendous. Some business risk is manageable, and a good business plan is a good way to manage risk. Some you just have to recognize there are things that might happen that you have to be resilient and responsive to. So your positive response to challenges and your ability to learn from mistakes that are controllable, very, very important trait. Perseverance. It's a long road. I mean, you've chosen to go into business for your employment. Got to stick with it, right? When things get tough, you've got to be able to figure out how to keep going and still be successful. So that requires quite a bit of confidence. It doesn't mean that there's not fear and loathing associated with small business. You have all full range of emotions when you start and run your small business, but confidence is one you need to keep coming back to, and passion. Passion's like the fuel that runs our engine, right? I love this stuff. I not only love to make it, I love to sell it. I love to serve the community I'm within. So passion, not just for your product, but passion for the purpose you went into business, about why you're doing it. Being flexible and resilient, because this is a marathon, not a sprint. You've got to be able to do this over time, move with market trends, make adjustments to the marketplace as it changes, make adjustments to the national economy as it changes. So flexibility and resilience are very important. And lastly, and this I add this one, didn't come from my research, I just know it to be true. You've got to ask for and be able to accept help. This is one of the things that the Maine Small Business Development Center is here for, to answer questions and to give you the assistance you need through our certified business advisors to help you start up and be successful. So as you start your journey, get to know yourself as a business person, ask the kind of questions of people who are in business. I like to say, what are the three traits that you are most useful to you? What are the three things that you know about yourself that you need to be cautious of? You want to get organized financially in your small business. This is a professional and personal money game. I add quotes only because games are played by rules, and you need to understand what the rules of engagement are for your business and also your personal economy, because if you're self-employed, your living is made by successful management of your small business. You want to put together a plan to succeed in advance of starting your business, and then you want to have a plan each year to be successful. Do your research, work to find out if there's really a good market opportunity, work to find out if what you can sell has enough demand. We know ways to help you do this, but if you're not clear on what that means, Maine Small Business Development Center advisors can help you sort that out. You want to be able to know what success is to you so that you know how to set up a business which can fulfill that, your definition. $10,000 in supplemental income is a good, solid goal for some. Growing a business to sell in 10 years is a good, solid goal for somebody else, but clearly different definitions of success. And as you get started, recognize the Maine SBDC is a tremendous resource. Our website is just replete with great information. It keeps growing on a regular basis. We have a super team out there providing online information and training. We've got statewide business advisors, and I just encourage you, if not Maine SBDC, the service SCORE is another free confidential service in many marketplaces. But do ask and receive help as you get started, especially if business is a new enterprise for you. Appreciate your time. I would take some questions. I think I've gone about 5 minutes over my allotted time, but Kelsey, do you have?
So I just typed into the chat so it would pop up for everyone. So please go ahead and submit any questions that you have for Brad right in there. Thank you so much, Brad. I really appreciate that. And I have come to understand and have seen a lot about this idea that like we get to determine what success is for us, and especially through COVID of redefining what success might look for us is really going to be important. So don't think that your business, needs to be a brick and mortar place with 16 employees by the end of the first year. Like that might not be your success. So I appreciated that idea. We have one question in. Ben would like to know, are there any special recommendations you can offer in regards to medical farming? So I'm assuming that they mean medical cannabis. And the Maine SBDC, we are not actually able to assist with medical cannabis because of the federal mushrooms, he's saying. I think that based on the federal regulations that we are prevented from assisting with those businesses. So I'm not sure that we actually have any of that information.
Yeah, we get federal funding, and therefore, if the feds have designated a particular crop as a class 1, I'm not even sure what the designation is. I just know that we can't work with medical marijuana, hemp is a question mark, mushroom, no. But there are other agricultural programs out there that probably can, depending on their source of funding. So I would say take a look at what's available for new farmers in Maine, and see what resources are out there.
Yeah, I can look up that contact information. We met with an agricultural organization earlier this season, but I can't remember the name off the top of my head. I will look for that.
I think we're finding that a lot of agricultural products have tremendous other medicinal uses. Unfortunately, that's not our call when it comes to providing service or funding partners.
Like you said, it always comes down to the funding, doesn't it? One way or the other. Well, everyone, please feel free to submit any of those questions in the chat here.
Big shout out here to Tina and Chris. Good to see you guys. Thanks for joining, and the others of you. Tina and Chris and I are colleagues, so nice to have them on board.
Yeah, it's one of the nice things about. Oops, say that again.
I was just going to say, if there are no other questions, what's our next step?
Next step well, what would you say is the very single thing that everyone should do after this session? If they are thinking whether or not they should start a business, what is one takeaway that everyone should do this afternoon?
Well, I would go back to that checklist of the 5 important considerations, because I sort of put those in the order that I think people need to reflect on. You know, you have to know why you're doing what you want to do and how to measure the results of your activity. You know, because managers, if you can't manage it, it's going to manage you, right? So, and if you can't measure it, you can't manage it. So having time-phased and measurable expectation is a really good way to start. And then check your idea out in the marketplace. I mean, why, if it makes sense to you, is there a market opportunity? Because there's a lot of really good ideas out there that there's so many people doing them that there's not room in the particular geographic marketplace for another business like that. So once you know what you want to do and how you're going to measure success, go out and see if there's an opportunity. And that means business opportunity, not a passion, but a business opportunity that you can put your passion forward. I think those are the first steps, and then you need to start writing the plan. Because if you don't have a plan to succeed, most likely, and we looked at the statistics, there are a lot of risks out there, and a business plan can help you overcome a lot of them by helping you do the research and make decisions about what it's going to take to be successful. So, top 3.
That is, I agree. We actually have a number of webinars and events coming up in the near future that will lend themselves to that. So it looks like on April 14th, we have a Understanding Your Customer with Market Research event. And so I think that if you are just getting started and you want to start doing that research, now would be that time. You've got 2 weeks to kind of figure out what does that competition look like out there, and then you can join us for Allison's session afterwards to build on your customer research and just stacking it all together as you're gathering more information. So I will include all of our upcoming scheduled webinars in my follow-up email as well, so you can go ahead and register for any additional sessions that you think will build upon your knowledge. Tommy is asking, I have to do a checklist? Tommy, could you clarify
checklists are great. I think that most of our business planning information is sort of in an outline form with a flow of information and either questions or points that need to be both considered and decided upon. So much like a checklist, Many, I like checklists because you can make
I do
sure it's
too.
comprehensive and then you can make sure you did it or you didn't do it. It's a measurement tool, right? The Maine SBDC on its website has a checklist for getting started in business. And I would encourage you to look at our startup portion of our website and go to that checklist because these are higher level steps about the administration of your business and getting started in many cases, choosing your legal structure, writing your business plan, figuring out what insurance you need, what the regulatory environment looks like for your particular business. So the checklist is very valuable, and I would encourage you to look at our site about that one.
And as someone who loves checking things off checklists,
Yeah.
I can tell you it's very satisfying to finish an entire checklist.
Yeah.
We also recently launched a new e-course on demand education platform. Say that 3 times fast. And I will include a link to that in our follow-up email as well. But 2 of the sessions that we have right now are starting a small business and how to create a business plan. So if you have not, so if this is the first time that you're really starting to gather any of this information, I would definitely recommend checking out those e-courses. They are free. They are pausable. So they take about 20 to 30 minutes to go all the way through, but if you didn't have time to go all the way through, you can pause and come back to it. You create an account and we will be adding new sessions to that periodically. We have quite a few in the making right now. So those will be coming out as we go along, but those are additional places for you to build on the information that we learned today. It doesn't seem like there are any other questions in the chat. So
Well,
if any,
I would just like to add one last thing. Thank you very much for your time today. Time is valuable, and I appreciate your attention. And I hope it's been useful. If I can help anybody, or if you're in an area where there's another small business developments, Maine Small Business Development Center business advisor, reach out. It's a very good first step to begin the inquiry about getting started in small business. Thank you for your time. I need to move on with my day.
There you go. Well, thank you so much, everyone. Have a great afternoon.